Welcome to episode number 7 of the Between Two Brands podcast. I'm your host, Bill Petrie, and I can't believe we're already 7. I think I'm going to say that every week. Can't believe we were at 6. Couldn't believe we were at 5, but here we are. I cannot believe we're already at 7 yet. I feel like I'm starting to get a little more comfortable with the format, starting to hit the stride. So to say, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank everybody for giving this a chance. I hope you're getting value out of it. Whether it's a little bit of education, a little bit of entertainment, or a little bit of both. Now, before we get rolling today, let me go ahead and pay the rent. Hey, who doesn't love a podcast? Well, you're listening to a podcast, so stands to reason you like podcasts. But yet, who doesn't love an industry podcast? It gives you a behind the scenes look at what's really happening in the industry we all love. Well, thanks to our good pals over at PPAI, they have launched a brand new podcast called Voice and Force. Now, what's so special about this podcast? You might be silently or out loud asking yourself. Good question. I am glad you asked. Voice and Force, hosted by PPAI's digital media manager, Colette Williams, will be a limited, totally bingeable, and targeted for each season to ensure that there is specific purpose and value for the members. Now, the first season is about leading PPAI 100 and is all about helping members make sense of that list and, just as important, get the most out of that program. Truly, I can tell you, I've listened to a first few episodes and it opened my eyes to the origins of the PPAI 100 and how those numbers translate into tangible impact. The episodes are tight, they're informative, and they're consumable, clocking in at about 20 minutes per episode. And it's a very wise investment of your podcast listening time. You want to learn more? Of course you do. Head over to ppai.org/podcast to start binging season 1, leading PPAI 100. And thanks to PPAI for being part of the Between Two Brands podcast. The last few weeks, when I've done my solo part before we bring on the guest, I've kind of had a couple rants, a couple complaints. Figured I'd flip the script a little bit today, and let's just do a quick industry news roundup. Number 1, Stanley Black & Decker is suing Stanley Drinkware, which is owned by Pacific Market International, PMI. They're suing them over the name Stanley. I'm sure you've all seen this. It's essentially, since there's been several ways of negative press that has led the tool maker to, they are alleging that it's confusing customers in the marketplace and damaging Stanley Black & Decker's reputation. I think we know what those negative things are. There's been some lead poisoning and some burn hazards, things like that. The toolmakers also claimed that PMI has broken a nearly 60-year agreement that limited the use of Stanley's name to, quote, insulated containers adapted to keep the contents hot or cold, close quote. Now, following PMI's alleged repeated non-compliance with that initial agreement, the parties signed an agreement in 2012 requiring PMI to not only include its full corporate name with Stanley, which I don't think they have, but also not use Stanley as a company name, division, or proper noun, according to the complaint. And what they want to do is block the use of Stanley's name, and of course, they'd like some cash considerations. Stanley responded, Stanley Black & Decker's complaint takes aim at our century-old Stanley brand, apparently seeking to capitalize on our success and undermine over a century of innovation and hard work developing our food and beverage containment products, says the president of PMI. We consider protecting and defending our brand crucial. I don't know really what to think about this. To me, the name's always been confusing. Up until very recently, really till this lawsuit, I assumed it was part of Stanley Black & Decker. I actually had no idea. Now, maybe that's a criticism or an indictment of my knowledge of the situation, or maybe it's the fact that Stanley, the one owned by PMI, has done a really nice job of blurring the lines. I do feel like there's some merit to Stanley Black & Decker's lawsuit. It does seem like that PMI has skirted those rules a little bit of the agreement that they signed in 2012. By the same token, up until those lawsuits, I'm pretty sure Stanley Black & Decker benefited from all the buzz that the drinkware product line was generating for the overall brand. So to me, it's kind of a wash. If you really had issues with this, you would have sued 3 years ago when Stanley the drinkware burst onto the scene and it was the craze. You wouldn't wait until the quote unquote bad press of lead being used between the vacuum seals or the potential for burn issues and situations. So uh, this is why I'm glad I'm not a judge. I see both sides of it, but I would actually, believe it or not, lean toward the drinkware company here, mainly because the uh, the plaintiff in this party, which is Stanley Black and Decker Tools, waited until things kind of went sideways or started appearing to go sideways for the drinkware company. I think I would rule in favor of Stanley Black and Decker, but they wouldn't get a dime out of the defendant here, Stanley Drinkware. All right, that is roundup news item number one. How about number two? If there's a one, there should be a two, right? Excellent. Um, the 2025, I was fascinated by this. The 2025 PPAI Expo was officially a waste-free event, which meant 91% of potential waste was diverted from landfills and recycled, and that makes it qualified as a waste-free event. Now, this was an increase from 88% in 2024. Now, you might think, wow, a 3% increase, that's not that big of a deal, but it actually is a huge deal. It represents 50,000 additional pounds of recycled materials. Now, there's a really cool website. There's a really cool article on the PPI website, the news and media section, that breaks it all down in all manner of glorious numbers. I just thought as we try so hard in our industry to move away from the cheap plastic shit a lot of people give away, the products that our good friend Danny Rosen might call brand fill, those slightly, sometimes maybe not as useful pieces of merchandise that we sell to our clients. As we try to get away from that, we try to get to more sustainable products, and sustainability can mean they're kept and used for longer. Or it can mean they're made out of recycled materials or they're easily recyclable, whatever that means. We're moving towards that. And for what we're trying to do as an industry, I love that PPAI is leading the charge here. And a huge, huge, huge shout out to Liz Wimbush, the Director of Sustainability and Responsibility at PPAI, for really spearheading this charge. You know, it's not often enough we recognize individuals within PPAI for doing the wonderful jobs that they do. So huge hats off, kudos, a round of applause, whatever you want to say about somebody owning that space as Director of Sustainability and Responsibility in Liz Wimbush and really making a tangible impact, creating a waste-free event out of an enormous event. So hats off to Liz Wimbush and the team at PPAI. All right, before we get to our guests, let's pay our second half of rent here. Hey, do you know what season it is? That's right. It's business valuation season. Perhaps you don't know what your company's worth. Maybe it's been more than a few years since your last valuation and you need a new benchmark to see if your company is increasing in value. Heck, maybe you want to see if you want to sell your company, what it's worth. Who knows? Regardless of the reason, Jamie Watson and her experts at Certified Marketing Consultants, they have the extensive experience in the world of promotional products and branded merchandise, and they really have the deep knowledge necessary to provide a fact-based valuation of your business. Simply email them at info@certifiedmarketing.com for a confidential discussion today. All right, that is the opening preamble. Let's go ahead and get right to our guest. And my first and only guest today needs absolutely no introduction, but as I like to do, I'd like to waste a little bit of your time, his time, and my time by introducing him anyway. He is the Vice President of Supplier Relationships for Industry Business Service Provider commonsku, focused on strategic partnerships and industry integrations that help drive sales and efficiency. Our guest enjoys collaborating with his industry peers to address technical challenges impacting our shared industry. Within the industry, he sits on the board of the directors for Promo Cares, serves as a volunteer for Promo Standards, and is a past member of the Promotional Products Association of the Midwest Board of Directors, PPAI's Awards and Recognition Committee, and PPAI's Regional Association Committee Board. Holy cow. He also volunteers his time to the Big Slick Celebrity Weekend, which I'm wearing a shirt, he's wearing a jacket. Big Slick Celebrity Weekend, an annual fundraising event that has raised over $25 million for the Pediatric Cancer Center at Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas City, Kansas. Just let's call it Kansas City. I always get that confused. Please join me in welcoming the one, the only, David Shultz. David, how the hell are you?
I'm great, Bill. How are you doing? That
I am
that intro
I'm
sounds like
delightful.
I'm speaking at a regional trade show or something, so I apologize.
No, there's nothing worse. You do a lot of speaking in the industry, as do I, and there's nothing worse than providing somebody your bio and then having to hear them read it. It is excruciating. It's just like,
It
I'll
is.
never forget once. Quick story. One time, when John Cudahy he's now the executive director of SAGNY, but he was actually the president of the board of directors or chair of the board. He said, "How do you want me to introduce you?" And I said, "Say anything you want." And I was speaking at Promotions East, and he walks up, stands next to me, puts his hand on my shoulder in front of 150 people and says, "This is Bob Peachtree. He's going to talk to you," and just walked off. And to
That's
this day, that's my favorite introduction anybody's ever done for me speaking.
I like it. That's perfect. I mean, you can't do any
Uh,
better.
no, no. Okay, you know the drill. You're going to
I
bring in a
do.
topic or two we're going to chat about, and then I have just five very easy questions. Want to get to know you a little bit. I'd like to, I want people to know the David Schultz that only I know.
That's scary. I don't
That
know
is
what kind of
scary.
questions that's going to entail.
So I'll let you think. I'll let you think on that while you bombard
Okay.
me with some questions.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's front and center. I don't believe it's been discussed in depth in your last couple
Mhm.
episodes, but you and I both have this interesting role in this industry where we talk to a lot of suppliers and a lot of distributors every day. And the first couple months of the year have been weird. Things going on in political circles in this country are weird. I have a lot of suppliers rushing to find, let's say, alternate manufacturing locations at the moment in light of the tariffs. Just like, what are you hearing out there? Like, I'm hearing stuff all across the board from our suppliers at the moment, from distributors, in terms of what they're looking to do. If they do move manufacturing, are tariffs just going to move with it? And what is their confidence really for the year? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, and I want to hear your take on this too. I think what I'm hearing is the least effective general in military history, which is general confusion. That's generally what I'm hearing is the new administration is moving so fast with changes that they don't feel super well thought out in terms of what are the a potential impact that really the consequences of unintended impact. And so there seems to be a lot of, we're doing this, no, we're not, we're going to do this, we're threatening this, we might do this, and it seems it's exhausting. So I think everybody's head is on a swivel, and that's what I'm hearing is we are, from a supplier standpoint, absolutely looking at alternative manufacturing, but that's not built in a day. And so it's going to take time if people are going to move manufacturing out of China, or at this point even out of Mexico. So it's going to be a challenge for everybody. I think usually leading up to an election, that's when all the uncertainty is, and so there's always a bit of uneasiness. Once the election happens, though, that generally tends to even things out. And this is the
Right.
first time I can ever remember where the uneasiness has tripled since the election. And it's not just from Democrats, it's Republicans too. I mean, it's all across the board. I think everybody's like, okay, wow. Because regardless of your political affiliation, I don't think anyone would argue with the statement of, yeah, government needs to be right-sized and more efficient. Just that statement on its surface, I think we all agree with.
Sure.
It's just the velocity and it's the seeming lack of real consideration of what the real world impact of those decisions are, I think are concerning. And I think concerning in our industry, what are you hearing?
Yeah, same thing. It's, a lot of our suppliers are they're looking at alternate sourcing in other countries. I think to some extent they're also worried about if they do that or is it ultimately going to be a tariff on Asia, not just China?
Right.
Is it you see people moving manufacturing to Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand. You also see a lot of what they're calling tariff rerouting in a way. So,
Yeah.
let's say Vietnam imports $1 million worth of T-shirts, and then they sell 800,000 of those T-shirts to the U.S. Like they originated in China, but they came through Vietnam, so they're not hit with the Chinese tariffs. You see Chinese companies opening factories in Thailand, so you don't even know if you're working with a Chinese company or a Thai company in that case.
Right.
Yeah, it's got people nervous. I know a lot of suppliers have bought a ton of inventory to have it onshore before some of these tariffs take place. But you're right. I think one of the scarier ones is our friends in Canada and Mexico that have,
Yeah.
a few years ago, it was it was a big plus to nearshore and bring manufacturing back closer to the U.S.
Mhm.
and have it across the border in Mexico or in Canada. And some of our smaller, very unique suppliers that manufacture in Mexico are super worried about this at the moment, what it's going to take to get product across the border and make it affordable.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's the continual, we're doing this, we're not doing this. It's where we're delaying 30 days. As a species, humans are resilient, we're resourceful, we'll figure things out. But it seems like the rules are so much in flux right now. And even if a rule's made, it seems like you can almost add the words right now. That's what's happening right now. Might be different tomorrow, might be different next week. It might not be different for 4 or 5 years, might be different in 20 years. Who knows? But it just seems so, it just, there's a continual, here's what I would say is a continual feeling of unease because there's no predictability to what's going on.
Yep. I agree. And it's funny because even if I think about, we go through a big forecasting exercise every fall,
Yeah,
and we absolutely took the election into consideration during that process, both for our sales and for the sales of our
sure.
distributors and our suppliers. And like you said, I think normally I would think in the months leading up to the election and maybe the month after is when we have to take some of those risks into consideration. But this has gone on now for 3 months, and there's kind of no end in sight at the moment with all the changes
Yeah.
happening. So it'll be an interesting year for sure.
It will be very interesting. I believe in the overall good of people, the overall good of our industry. We'll figure it out, but boy, it is unsettling right now.
For sure. Yeah, and I think it was just this week, ASI's latest article came out that said distributor sales were at what, 2.6% growth
Yeah,
last year, I think. Of course,
yeah,
inflation was at 2.9%. So,
yeah.
take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, a lot of people are doing great. Our commonsku distributors and suppliers were up in January again, and that's, for us, that's great to see. And I hope the whole industry has a good year despite the uncertainties.
Agreed, agreed. Good topic. David Shultz coming in hot
There you
in the
go.
Between Two Brands podcast.
Okay, you ready to get a little bit more personal now? Less.
Nothing would give me more pleasure.
Okay, I'm fascinated by this story. Your journey, you guys as a family have had
Yeah,
just we won't even talk about all of the scares over the last several years from
yeah,
Sandy's episode to your health scare to all of the above. And now you've been
yeah.
on this journey where, despite the diabetes, you've impressively managed to keep that in check without medication through diet and through exercise. And
Mhm.
you're on a journey to run your first 5K right here in Kansas City. I want to hear about that journey and how that's going.
Uh, it's going okay. No, here's to be clear, I do have diabetes. I am on a pill. I don't take any insulin. I am on a pill every day, but that's it. No injections, no shots. And I worked hard, as you know, to get off that as long as I can. At some point, my pancreas will say, that was cool. Go get some insulin. But right now, everything is going great. And I'm very thankful for the support of you and certainly my family and friends everywhere. Um, it when I started monitoring my blood sugar on a regular basis, it was pretty clear maybe I wasn't making the right choices. I didn't realize that Pringles were not a whole food.
It's a
And they were not
vegetable.
keto. Yeah, they were not keto friendly, which boy could have knocked me over with a feather. Um, when you get a wake up call like that, and you either answer it or you don't. And I have family members that have diabetes, and they're like, "Yeah, I just take a bunch of insulin and then go make love to a bowl of pasta." And I just don't. My brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I was given a diagnosis, and one of the few good things about diabetes, to a large extent, you control you can control how the disease impacts you. And so I decided to change my diet completely, to start exercising again because I hadn't probably in 4 or 5 years. And so I started off, to get to your question, I started off by walking just around the block. And then I'm like, I need to do a little bit more. So I started walking around the neighborhood. And then I got to this about 2.5 mile circuit where I would walk every, 5 to 6 times a week, first thing in the morning. I'm like, I'm getting bored walking. I'm going to start running. And run I did. And so I do the same 2.5 mile loop every day, about
Yeah.
5 to 6 days a week. Um, and I run about 60 to 70% of it, walk about 30% of it. My goal, I'm doing it very slow. I'm still 55, and so I still feel things just because I sat in the wrong chair for too long. My goal is starting in March to up that to the 3.1 for the 5K and run as much as I can of it, walk when I need to. And my goal is by the time we get to Kansas City on May the 29th, I think it's 29th. Is it 29th or 30th? Whatever that Saturday is. I will run. Hope 30th. Okay. My goal is to run at least 85 to 90% of it. I'm doing it regardless. And so it's been something I'm not one to say I've done this and I run this far and but I'm happy I'm doing. I'm proud of that. I'm doing it.
Awesome.
It's
No, it's great. I mean, you're doing it for you. You're coming here to run a race for a great cause.
Yeah,
It's impressive all the way around. So
I'm
kudos to you.
excited. Well, I'm not one to throw those things out there lightly because it sometimes feels like a humble brag, like look at me. But I've never run a race before. I tried years ago. I had this dream of I'm going to run the New York City Marathon by the time I'm 40. Just one of those weird goals. And I'd start running, and because I was quite a bit heavier, I'd get shin splints, and I was probably wearing the wrong shoes. And I could never work through that. Well, now that I don't weigh as much as I used to, and I'm wearing the right shoes, and I'm doing it on a regular basis. I don't have shin splints anymore. And I feel energized after a run. It sets my day up for success. I feel like, okay, I've done the hardest thing I'm going to do today, which is get up and do it. And
That's
so
great.
I love it. And so, it'll be fun. We'll have a big group out there, I think, running.
Oh man, last I looked, I think there's about 24, 26 people from the promo industry that are flying into Kansas City that weekend to support this cause, and many of them are doing that race, whether they're walking or
Yeah.
running, which is amazing. So
Yeah.
it'll be a great time. Okay,
It'll be a good thing.
the bonus question to that? What song on your playlist makes you pick up the pace just a little bit?
Oh, I tell you what, the song that always gets me going, and it's not a Van Halen song, surprisingly enough. It is a song called Thrown Further by Tremonti, which
Okay,
if you know that's a band name, but it's also the last name of the guitar player and the singer who was the guitar player in Creed. So all you Creed haters out there, Tremonti's more of a thrash metal band, side project of his, but yeah, Thrown Further by
okay,
Tremonti. Yeah.
interesting. For
Yeah, it's
me, it's
angry.
the years that I was back when I was still in shape and doing Ironman triathlon. They always started the Ironman race with "Thunderstruck" by AC/DC. So every time that song comes on, I cringe a little bit, like, "Oh my God, do I have to go swim 2.5 miles now?" So
I, I I read somewhere where AC/DC, because they license that song, it's in every stadium and every football game, every sporting event. They just by the licensing of that song, they make $500 million a year.
oh
Just
my
that song.
gosh, wow.
Which means we're in the wrong business.
Well, see, that's when Jason starts selling the intro songs to your podcast and making that kind of
I
coin on the
know.
side. It'd be great.
Don't suggest that because he's going to start charging me royalties. All right. Let's
Okay,
get to know David
what you got for
Schultz.
me?
Oh, I've got five. Look at that. Five easy questions in micro print, hence the glasses. Uh, David, you're the
Yes.
VP of Supplier Partnerships at commonsku. If commonsku developed an AI that could negotiate supplier deals better than you, would you train it or sabotage it to keep your job?
Well, we train it, of course. We actually are training AI right now. In fact, I've used it to, yeah. Okay, well, here's one of the interesting ways I've used AI. I don't use it a
Okay.
ton. As much our development team uses it a ton, and we are training AI models at the moment to make us all more efficient. I actually posted a meme the other day that said no matter how many bright, shiny AI tools you get, it always comes back to relationships.
Yeah.
And in my role as, with supplier partnerships, a lot of these folks have
Mhm.
been partners and customers and friends of mine for 20 years now. So
Yeah.
I believe the relationships are key, but the tools that can make you more efficient absolutely are going to help. And I will say once or twice, I used ChatGPT to help me rewrite an email to a customer where I was just frustrated. And I think my anger was
Mhm.
coming out in the email. And I asked ChatGPT to rewrite it in a way that was less confrontational and more supportive. And it did an amazing job. So I will say AI is already helping me manage relationships with our supplier partners.
Yeah. It
And I do
can be. I'm sorry.
no, I was just say I
Yeah.
already have a tool that is better at negotiating with suppliers, and I call it Catherine Graham. It's not AI, but I just pick her up.
uh,
We need
yeah,
to
she's awesome. Here's the thing, too. AI does help make more efficient, but it does not replace relationships.
for
And,
sure,
and so I
absolutely.
agree. All right. Question two. We share a common love of music, especially from the 80s. At the same time, you're not a huge fan of hair metal or hard rock. What specific life event made you loathe hair metal? Did you lose some sort of high school talent show to a dude in spandex shredding eruption? Or did someone dedicate Every Rose Has Its Thorn to your high school crush first? David, who hurt you on the inside?
Oh my God, it's like you were able to read my mind. I lost a battle of the bands to a gentleman wearing parachute pants, as a matter of fact,
Yes.
who was shredding some metal. And by the way, that guitar player today is a very, very good friend of mine, and you will see him on stage at Big Slick because he is the Big Slick House Band.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was my experience. But more interestingly, it's when I started playing guitar and looking to play in a band. Um, I moved to Kansas City. My dad had just retired from the military, so I came into Kansas
Mhm.
City middle of my sophomore year. Tough time to move.
Tough time to come. Yeah.
There was like metal going on, there was new wave going on, and the first kids I met, like hanging out in the hallways, that kind of befriended me, said, "Yeah, we're going to this concert Saturday night. You should come with us." I'm like, "Cool."
So
Here.
how was Echo and the Bunnymen?
Oh, you were so close. You were so close.
Dang it.
See if I can. Let's see.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear this?
Yes.
Again. This was the first concert I went to. You remember that?
I do. I
The
do.
opening band was
Oh, very nice.
okay. So I saw that and I thought, you know what? I can play that on guitar. So I think I could be in a new wave band. And then the next concert I went to was this.
Ah, yes. The greatness that
I
is Van
walked
Halen.
I walked out of there saying that guy like descended from heaven with a guitar, strapped to his waist, and I am never ever going to be able to play that on the guitar. And so I wound up in a new wave band for many years and left metal behind. But it's not that I don't like it; I appreciate
I
it.
know. I know. So, but whereas Edward Van Halen inspired a lot of guitar playing,
Absolutely.
he absolutely destroyed your wanting to be Eddie Van Halen. He's like, I can
Yeah.
never touch that. I'll never be that.
I had when I must have been eighth, ninth grade. I had a guitar. To my parents' dismay, I bought colored electrical tape and taped it all up like an Eddie Van Halen guitar,
Yeah.
but it never sounded like Eddie Van Halen. So Here we are
Yeah.
today. I'm playing the same new wave songs I played 40 years ago.
Yeah, it's funny. I've heard, stories of the guitarist Eddie influenced over the years, and they'd meet him, meeting your idol, and they always said he was very nice. And they would plug into his rig, they'd play his guitar on his rig, thinking, I am now going to sound like
Yeah,
Eddie Van Halen. And they said to a person, I can't do it. And there's something in his fingers or something in all, him that makes it sound like that, which is fascinating
for
for me.
sure. I agree. I've handed my guitar player to other people, and it just, in fact, the guitar player we were talking about earlier that had the parachute pants in high school when they beat me in.
Perpetual Change, correct? Is that the band?
Yes. So Mr. Bill Lattis, one of the guitar players in that band, was it three? It was 2019. It was the last Big Slick before COVID. One of our guests that year was the very talented. Uh, oh my God, why am I having a brain freeze now? Alex Lifeson,
Oh, from
guitar player
Rush.
in Rush. And for these guys to have him on stage with them was like a dream come true. And we went out and found a bunch of Gibson Les Pauls to rent for him. And he went through and he played them all and he didn't like them and he didn't like them. And Bill finally said, well, Mr. Lifeson, do you want to play my Les Paul? And he played it and he's like, this is the best one. So he played it all night while Bill watched Alex Lifeson make his guitar sound like Alex Lifeson. And it was pretty interesting
That's
experience.
amazing. That's amazing. Okay, let's keep going. That's great stuff. Dave and I could talk about music for
Yes.
hours, and we
Onward.
have. David, you're a huge fan of frozen cocktails, especially at a swim up pool bar. What's the absolute worst frozen drink someone could order that would make you question their entire existence?
That's a good question. Because I usually try to at least give them all a chance.
Yeah,
Winners are obviously going to be pina colada, strawberry daiquiri, and then the quintessential mix of those two called a Miami
the Miami
Vice.
Vice. Yes.
Yep. I think when you start throwing in things that are green or
Hmm.
peach flavoring, that's where I'm probably going to walk away.
That's fair. And just so you know, if anybody happens to go on the promo cruise, the Miami Vice is the breakfast of champions on Coco
It
K.
is.
It truly is. All
It is.
right. If a commercial, you're a pilot, this is something else that people may or may not know about you. You are a pilot, you fly. If a commercial flight's captain suddenly became incapacitated and they asked, is there a pilot on board? Would you A, casually raise your hand to save the day? B, demand everyone officially refer to you as Captain Schultz before taking over? Or three, C, pretend you didn't hear so you didn't have to deal with the mountains of paperwork aftermath in the aftermath?
No, of course I'd offer to help, but I mean, understanding that landing a Dreamliner is a little different than landing the little Cessna that I fly. Uh,
Don't you just push a button to land those things?
well, I don't know. I mean, sometimes they land upside down. You don't want that to happen.
You
Um,
don't.
too
No,
soon.
you don't.
Uh,
Okay.
thank God everybody on that flight was okay.
No
That
kidding.
much. Uh, yeah, that's. I'm assuming there would be other much more talented pilots somewhere sitting on that plane before they would come to me to fly it.
In, in, and given the fact that there's some sort of near plane disaster on the daily basis right now, I'm not sure I should have even asked that question, to be very candid with you. But I wrote it a couple days ago before a Southwest flight going into Midway almost landed on a Learjet. So,
We'll wait and see
hey,
what the comments say about that.
yeah. All right. Hey, last question. Like I've talked about you and with things you, but I mean, let's face it, you're really a Renaissance man. You play a wide variety of instruments. You sing and write songs, parody and otherwise. You're a pilot, a triathlete, kind of an expert on the continuing digital transformation happening in the promotional products industry. You're an accomplished speaker. Um, you give back so much with worthy causes like Big Slick and Promo Cares. With all of that going for you, what in the hell gives you the right to have that kind of kick-ass hair?
Well, I mean, I work with Bobby Lehue now, who, come on, let's face it, he's got the best hair in the industry. So I don't know, maybe one of these. I lost my comb like 30 years ago and never got a new
Never
one, so
found
it's
it?
been this ever since. But
Well,
maybe as I get older and wiser, yeah, I'll grow mine out like that and see what we can do there.
it's pretty epic. Oh, what? Hold on. What?
Uh-oh.
Really? A rapid fire with David? Okay. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Someone just handed me a rapid fire, David. It's 80s hair metal bands. For those of you not familiar, rapid fire, I'm just going to give him a choice either or. There are no wrong answers. It's just something to learn a little bit more about Dave and his love or hatred of 80s hair metal bands. David, do you have any questions before we begin, or are you ready?
I know there are wrong answers. I've seen this. I know where this
No,
goes.
no. Very simple. Let's start off with an easy one. Rat or Dokken?
Rat was also one of my first
Okay.
concepts.
Okay. Faster Pussycat or Quiet Riot?
Quiet Riot was the opening act for Rat when I saw them, so I'm gonna go with Quiet Riot.
Okay, good. Look, you're 2 for 2. See how easy this is? There's no wrong answers. Cinderella or Skid Row?
Oh, Cinderella for sure. The videos and the hair blowing and stuff was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you're nobody's fool. Twisted Sister or Vixen?
Oh, we got to go with Twisted Sister.
Correct. You are 4 for 4. Kirby could never approach this. This is pretty amazing.
Sorry, Kirby.
Uh, let's do the Battle of the White Bands. White Snake or White Lion?
Oh boy, I think I got to go with White Snake.
Yeah, there's where you kind of screwed up, Dave.
Oh,
White Lion is the correct answer. Although Whitesnake has better songs, Vito Bratta is the closest thing to Eddie Van Halen I ever heard playing guitar.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, let's start getting a little more low rent as we talk about 80s hair metal bands. Bullet Boys or Brittany Fox?
Oh my Lord. Wow. I mean, I just didn't they have Brittany Fox posters in like the store in the mall, Spencer's?
Yeah, yeah,
So
they did.
go with
They
that.
did. Okay, I actually that's accurate. Bang Tango or Tora Tora?
Oh wow, you are getting obscure now.
I,
They both have aeronautical references, so I kind of like them both, but we'll go with Tora
yep.
Tora.
Again, see, you had a little misstep, but you got right back on and kept going. I love it. Mr. Big or Pretty Boy Floyd?
Mr. Big.
Okay. Uh, let's go Battle of the Juggernauts. Motley Crue or
Ooh.
Bon Jovi?
Well, I love the upside down drumming, so I'm going Motley Crue.
Again, you're doing great. Winger or Warrant?
Oh boy. I'll go Winger.
Wow. I don't know how I feel about that because both bands suck. Last one. Let's do the Battle of Good versus Evil. Wasp or
Oh boy.
Striper? Are you going to go for the yellow and black attack, or are you going for Blackie Lawless and the odd cod piece?
I think they had the costume game down pat, so we'll go with them.
You're going with Wasp.
Yeah, sure.
This is the stuff you can only get on the Between Two Brands podcast. But hey, kids, as I mentioned at the front, PPAI has launched a brand new podcast called Voice and Force. It is hosted by PPAI's digital media manager, Colette Williams, and it's limited, totally bingeable, and targeted for each season so that you can really ensure you get some good takeaways from here. The first season is Leading PPAI 100, which is helping members make sense of that list and how to get the most out of it. You want to learn more? Of course you do. Head over to ppai.org/podcast and start binging on season 1, Leading PPAI 100. I tell you what, Dave, thank you so much for doing this. This was a blast. I hope you had a good time.
I'm going to
And
say, though, speaking of the number 100, there's a
yeah,
100% chance you will not hear the term codpiece on that podcast. Just
you know
saying.
what? That's a very good point. And I think we're all lesser because of it.
Yeah. Well, thanks,
Thank you,
Bills.
Dave.
Appreciate it.